Hello, everybody. I'm seeing people coming in. We're going to give you about 1 minute, and then we'll start our program. And we're going to ask that your cameras are off. Also, let's see. Ingrid, do we have our recording on? Yes. Great.
Yes.
Terrific. Well, I think we have a full program, so I think we'll go ahead and start right now. Greetings, everyone, and welcome to Color Literacy Forum number 16. It's great to see everybody here. I'm Luann Stovall, member of the Color Literacy Project core team and host of the Color Literacy Forums. The forums offer a platform to share innovative research, teaching methods, and resources to expand 21st century color education at the university level across all disciplines, from design and the arts to humanities and the sciences. The forums are a collaboration of the Color Literacy Project in partnership with the International Color Association, that's the AIC, and the Intersociety Color Council, the ISCC, and Cumulus, the leading global association of art and design research. So before we jump in, please keep your cameras on and microphones muted during the forum. And now, though, be sure to let us know who you are by putting your name, where you're joining us from, and your university or place of work in the chat box. An active chat box is highly encouraged in our forums, so please keep your fingers warmed up for comments and questions. We would love to hear from everyone because we are in this color community together. Thank you. Please note that today's forum is being recorded and will be available within about 10 days. All of the past forum recordings are posted to our YouTube channel, which you can then access directly on the Color Literacy Project website. That is colorliteracy.org. All right, this is the second forum in our 2026 series titled Color in Practice, Expanding Knowledge for a Changing World. As global challenges reshape how we design, communicate, and engage with our environments, the subject of color itself must evolve to meet new social, ecological, and technological demands. This series highlights practitioners, researchers, and thinkers who propose innovative, meaningful, and ethical approaches to color grounded in current knowledge rather than inherited conventions. Each forum in the 2026 series showcases real-world applications that position color as a strategic, sensorial, psychological, ecological, and systemic tool, demonstrating its impact across materials, spaces, and experiences. Understanding this broader landscape allows us to see color not simply as an aesthetic choice, but as a force with tangible effects. This series invites participants to question assumptions, explore emerging methodologies, and expand their understanding of color. In doing so, it redefines color literacy for today and for the future, framing this interdisciplinary field as a vital and dynamic form of knowledge, one that equips us to navigate a complex, interconnected, and rapidly changing world with insight, responsibility, and creativity. Today's forum, number 16, is titled Material Lives of Color, From Heritage to Innovation, and it's part 2 in our 4-part series. Before I introduce our speakers, let's review the timeline. Today's forum is 90 minutes long and divided into 2 parts. Part 1 is an hour long. Each speaker will give approximately 15-minute presentation. You are encouraged to type your comments and questions in the chat box during the presentations. But rather than take questions after each talk, we will have a moderated panel discussion with the speakers in part 2 of the program. And that'll be from 11 to 11:30 Eastern. Your questions and comments will be addressed during this session. Now, I'm delighted to introduce our speakers. Talk 1, Colors of the Past in Southern Patagonia, an Archaeological Perspective. So for this talk, we have 3 collaborators, and only one is giving the presentation. So before we do the presentation, let me introduce the 3 speakers, the first of which will be giving the talk, and that's Anahí Ray. Anahí holds a PhD in archaeology from the University of Buenos Aires, where she is a professor and independent researcher at the National Scientific and Technical Research Council, based at the National Institute of Anthropology and Latin American Thought. She has worked in different regions of Argentina, and her research focuses on rock art and different portable items in context of communication networks and social interactions between human groups on different spatial and temporal scales. Currently, she studies past human groups, mainly hunter-gatherers, who lived in central western Santa Cruz, located in southern Patagonia. The second collaborator is Lara Martínez. Lara has a degree in anthropology from the National University of La Plata in Argentina, where she is pursuing a PhD in archaeology at the University of Buenos Aires. She holds a doctoral scholarship from the National Scientific and Technical Research Council, based at the National Institute of Anthropology and Latin American Thought. Her research encompasses the role of color as part of past hunter-gatherer communication strategies in southern Patagonia. She studies rock art images and different kinds of archaeological materials related to the production of paints, including physicochemical analyses. Our third collaborator is Francisco Guichón. He has a PhD in archaeology from the University of Buenos Aires and is currently an assistant researcher at the National Institute and Technical Research Council, which is based at the National Space Activities Commission. He studies rock art, hunter-gatherer communication networks, and past land use in southern Patagonia. Over the last several years, his work has incorporated geographic information systems, remote sensing and satellite imagery and analysis for archaeological research, and cultural heritage management. So without further ado, looking forward to the talk, please welcome Anahí. The screen is yours.
Thank you everyone for listening to this presentation. Okay. Please let me know if everything is...
It's perfect. Yeah, it's great.
Great. Okay. Perfect. Okay, so as Luan told you, the 3 of us, we are archaeologists, so we are mainly interested in understanding how colors were used in the past, and precisely in our study region in Southern Patagonia. So, of course, if you have any questions that they said, please tell us in the chat box. We'll answer them shortly. So here, just to give you an idea of our study region in Southern Patagonia, it's in the southern tip of South America. So as you can see there, and we are in Argentina, and you have different environments there, but they are mainly a steppe environment, like the one you see in the first photograph. But we also understand that this different landscape is very important to understand and in order to understand past societies. So to give you an idea, we work with the hunter-gatherers in Patagonia. The earliest evidence of human groups in this region dates back to approximately 12,000 years ago. And the past inhabitants of this region, even until the 20th century, they were all organized into mobile societies that relied on hunting and gathering. So here you can find the timeline of our region that starts 12,000 years ago till historic times. And this is more or less the way we divide this millennia, so that you can understand more or less how we work with time in archaeology. And so we have these first human groups in these earliest evidences, and the human groups change their ways of lives, their ways of moving in this environment during this millennia, of course. So the last 3,000 years are more or less characterized by campsites in lowland areas and a reduction in the home range of family groups. So even if they were all hunter-gatherers, there are a lot of changes in time. So these are the different areas we work with in central western Santa Cruz province. So you have some images of the kind of landscapes you can find there. And something that is very important for us to tell you is that, first of all, we started working with rock art, and rock art is just the painted and engraved images that you can find on rocks. And then that we understand that most of them were a product of communication, of past communication. So here you have some examples of the paintings you can find during the early Holocene of the region. These are some of the engraved and painted images that you find during the Middle Holocene. And then you have some engraved images and paintings from the last 3,000 years. As you can see, there are different techniques, there are different kinds of morphologies, and you have, of course, different kind of colors in the case of the rock paintings. So before going forward in our presentation, it's very, very important for us to remember that the landscapes and the material remains we observe today are not identical to those that existed in the past. So in archaeology, it's very, very important to take into account the processes that affected these materials over time. So why are we interested in color? As I told you, we started studying rock art, and then so we were interested in understanding colors in rock painting. But going forward in our research, we saw the need to expand our research to deepen the study of color and coloring substances in the past. So different questions arise for our research. So for what purposes were coloring substances used in the past? And what role did color play in communication strategies mediated by material culture? And then a lot of other questions opened up when we started in this kind of research. What are the surfaces and objects on which paints were applied? What were the recipes and procedures that were used to produce these pigment mixtures? Which colors were used by the past inhabitants of central western Santa Cruz? And if they selected specific colors for certain images or surfaces, and if so, why? So this opened up a lot of different lines of inquiry. And we started constructing our toolbox for understanding colors in the past. First of all, we have the material evidences that are preserved in the archaeological record, but we also are studying the data provided by geology and geomorphology through the analysis of satellite images, some experimental work as well, physicochemical analysis, and the historical accounts and oral history that we can find today. So some of the initial results of our research, we started first of all with a standardization in color identification. Of course, as most of you must know, sometimes it's very subjective how we understand and how we identify colors in different materials, in different lighting conditions. So this was the first thing that we started to try to understand. Then as another task we undertook was the identification of potential natural pigments sources through field surveys and remote sensing. This is a very, very useful technique that allows us to understand in this landscape some of the potential sources. And so we can then go there and try to evaluate if there were effectively some of these pigment sources that we can use, that could be used in the past. And so we also undertook some experimental work the experimentation with these natural pigment samples that we obtained to evaluate the potential use of pigments in the past of these samples. Here, it was very important we had the feedback of an artist and conservation specialist as well. And in the case of the material record, besides rock art, we surveyed and made an inventory of all portable archaeological objects that related to the production, application, and use of color in the past. Here you have some examples of the kinds of material remains we can find in the archaeological record. And in the case of different uses, you can see also the application of paint to necklace beads, to bones that are intentional. We also did some of physicochemical analysis, and we started designing a multi-technique protocol for grinding stones with pigments and for other materials with the help of other specialists, of course, because we need these kind of talks and interactions with different specialists to try to understand this kind of line of evidence. Then another, of course, source of information is the historical accounts and oral history. What they tell us is also that there were other uses of colors in, for example, perishable materials that we don't have in the archaeological record. For example, this kind of clothes you see here that are just leather with different painted symbols on it. And historical accounts also show that coloring substances were used as sunblock and antiseptic. So we must we must know that these kind of uses were also could also be found in the past. Just to understand all the uses of these coloring substances. The distribution of the archaeological evidence shows us that there is a wide distribution in our study region. There was a lot of evidence of this production and use of color, but most of them date from the last 3,000 years. Of course, this could be due to some preservation biases now that I told you about. And when we try to understand the color palette of the past, we see that there are lots of colors here. You can see some just a standardization of them. That show us that in the past, in our study region, we can find the use of white, yellow, orange, pink, red, violet, black, and possibly green as well. And so when we see what kinds of evidence we have for the production and application, you have, well, there you have a synthesis of this, that you have some natural pigments in the archaeological record, some grinding stones, these kind of application tools. And so we also have evidences of use now, of course, of these coloring substances. All colors are represented in rock art, all the color palette we have seen up to now, of course, is represented in rock art. And in the case of portable items, we only see the use of color in the case of red. So in the case of necklace beads and animal bones I showed you before. So it seems that a different kind of cultural material had a different color palette. Here you can see some of the examples. We have that, in this case, is red. That is the dominant color in our study region. And you can see in a lot of a great diversity of rock art motifs and objects. So you can see some of them here. Then you have, in the case of orange and in the case of yellow, they are found in the rock art, but they are also found, for example, in case of orange, in some grinding tools. And in the case of yellow, we can have found some pigments in the archaeological sites. In this is a case of black and pink as well. Pink, in the case of black, you can see also rock art and grinding implements. And in the case of pink, also we have found some of rock art and pigment in the natural pigments. And these are the other kind of colors you can find that are only, for the moment, we have only found in rock art and paintings. And this is the case of white, of violet, and these weird kind of examples of green that we are not sure yet if it's green or if it's a color that has degraded. So just nearing the end of our presentation, What can we say today about color and hunter-gatherer groups in Patagonia? This is the chronology, the timeline I showed you before of these different kind of periods. We have segmented these millennia. And what can we say about it? First of all, the early Holocene and the middle Holocene show rock art with different colors, but we have found few examples of the production and elements that show the application of paints on different substrates. During the last 3,000 years, we have found a lot more of materials that show widespread use of color during the last 3,000 years, and it seems that there is different shades, different kind of implements, and a wider distribution during the last 3,000 years. That probably relates with the different mobility and land use strategies of these human groups. So which factors account for the colors we see in archaeological materials? First of all, it's important to remember these preservation and conservation issues. For example, as I said, in the archaeological record, few kind of organic materials preserved, such as leather, and of course, human skin, that you can also find in the historical accounts that there were some facial paintings, body paintings, and we can't see this in the archaeological record. Of course, something important also to consider is the access to specific pigments and technical knowledge regarding preparation. As I showed you before, remote sensing shows that the natural pigments are not distributed evenly across the landscape. So when you have to mobilize and across this landscape, there are a lot of kilometers that sometimes, if it's, 100 kilometers away or 200 kilometers away, it's more difficult to use certain pigment sources. So we must understand that the access to these specific pigments may have been an issue that hunter-gatherers groups had to consider in their mobility across the landscape. And of course, we understand that a lot of what we see in the colors in archaeological materials are due to the different human choices over time that are mainly driven by distinct uses and communicative needs, as I told you before. We can see that rock art shows different kind of what we can consider communication of different kind of informations that were used as this communicative medium to communicate with other hunter groups and with other people. So all of the things I have summarized today is not something that we have finalized. They are just activities we are undertaking today and questions that we are still addressing. So in that sense, this is a work in progress. And we are still looking for other ways to improve our research, to integrate other lines of evidence, other kinds of information that can help us understand what color was and what role color played in the past for these groups. So thank you everyone for listening to our presentation. And there you can find our Instagram for our project if you are interested in following us and knowing a bit more about our research. So thank you all for listening.
Thank you so much, Anahí. That is absolutely fascinating. I know I have lots of questions, and I'm sure everyone does, and I'm happy to see that happening in the chat box. Could you also, you might have done this and I didn't see it, but put the your Instagram tag in the chat box so we can follow you. I know that I want to do that as well. For everyone else, you know that there's 3 collaborators here with the project, and we will be talking with them with everyone during the panel discussion later. So thank you to all of you. That was excellent, and look forward to learning more during the panel discussion. So with that as an introduction, we're moving into talk 2, structural color in nature, from function to fabrication. Professor Silvia Vignolini graduated in physics from the University of Florence in Italy. From 2009, she was a postdoctoral researcher at both the University of Florence and the University of Cambridge. In 2013, she was a lecturer in physics at the University College London and then a lecturer in chemistry at the University of Cambridge, where she made important contributions to the fields of chemistry and biomaterials. Silvia was university lecturer in chemistry and biomaterials from 2017 to 2020, then professor of biomaterials and sustainability from 2020 to 2022. Currently, she is the director of the Max Planck Institute of Colloids and Interfaces in Potsdam, Germany. In this role, she leads the newly established Department of Sustainable and Bio-Inspired Materials, where she aims to research and develop materials with predominantly optical functions modeled on nature. Please welcome Silvia Vignolini. Silvia, the screen is yours.
Thank you. Thank you for the nice introduction. I hope you see, oops.
Yes, it's all good. Thank you.
Good, good. Okay. So today I'm going to talk about structural color, and I will introduce a bit what they are and how they work and what I mean by structural color. And then I will explain the role in nature and also what can we do for real application. So I start with what we know as pigment. So pigment are materials that are extracted or chemically produced to produce coloration in our everyday object. You are surrounded by pigment. The color that you are wearing, the color of the object that you usually use in your everyday light is actually a color that is made out of a material. And what do I mean by that? I mean that the characteristic of the color is a fingerprint of the material itself. And this color, they have a specific characteristic. When you illuminate them, they absorb part of the light, part of the electromagnetic spectrum of light. What is not absorbed is scattered back. So this is what you perceive with your eyes. And that's what we define as a color. However, you can make color out of transparent material. And this can sound strange, but actually you have the example in front of you when you see a soap bubble. In this case, you start with water and soap. And when you have them in a glass or in a container, you can actually see that the color it doesn't exist. It's a transparent material. But as soon as you create this really thin layer of water and soap, what you are creating a phenomenon that is called interference. And that you can actually make color out of a material that doesn't have any color and a chemical characteristic by itself. So this tells you two things. The first one is the fact that this interference mechanism can be obtained with any material. It is not a prerequisite of the material itself, so it can be made out of everything. So like water, but I can also use plastic. I can use, and I will show you in a moment how many other material nature uses to produce this principle. But another thing, because it's different from pigment, this color can also give rise to a phenomenon that is called iridescence, so that the color change in function of the angle that you are looking at it. So this is exactly the case of the soap bubble, that you cannot define a real color. The color really changes with respect to where you are looking it from. So in nature, this principle is exploited a lot by many different species, from animal to plants to even bacteria, to produce coloration. And I like to go through this different example and then give you a little bit of insights of what we have learned also and what is the role of this color in the context of communication, because it's really for animal and then plants rely on this color also for communication between the species and also intraspecies. So I think that the easiest example of structural color is that you maybe also are familiar is what you observe in birds. So this is the example of the peacock, but many birds, including pigeons, they have coloration in their neck, in the feathers, or also in other parts of the body. And in the case of bird, it's really easy to discuss what is the function of structural color, because it's really easy to study. It's because of the mating properties. So in fact, if you look at male often have the structural color really prominent, and female don't have it. And this is simply because the male needs to somehow prove the female that they have this really strong iridescent color. That means that they are well fed, that they are good, potentially good mate. So if you think about it, it's represented to us. It's not that different on when we try to put makeup to impress our partner. So if we buy a shiny car to impress possible other people we want to mate with, yes? So color can also have a different function. In a lot of insects, it's used for camouflage. This is like a weevil, and when you look at the weevil, the coloration, this green coloration, it's actually produced in order to be able to camouflage nicely with the leaf and with the environment that these insects are living from. Interestingly, structural color also exists for mammals, and this is like for me is very, very nice, because the same material that we have in our skin, collagen, in this case of these baboons, it's used to produce structural color. And also here, for the case of mammals, we know that the structural color has an important mating purposes, because not only it's found in the face, but it's mainly found nearby the reproductive organs. So it's like a sort of a measurement of the fitness of the animal. This type of structural color in plants, I find it also very fascinating with respect to what the previous talk. Yes, they are known to scientists since centuries. I think that the color of the peacock, the first report that has been somehow where they think about the origin of this color, it's a bit strange. It cannot be due to pigment. Is given by Lucrezio in the Rerum Naturae, so 2,000 years ago. And essentially, what Lucrezio says, he says this color doesn't looks different with respect to the direction in which I'm looking at it. So it cannot be a property of the material only, but it's a property of how the material interacts with light. And it gives obviously a completely different and wrong explanation of the physical principle, but the intuition and the understanding of the phenomena, it's kind of was already it's really evident, and you can see it for yourself. Then the physical explanation came only 200 years ago, when they actually describe how light works and how light can interact with the material that are on the really nanoscale, and can actually also produce this nice colored effect. So I go back to this slide, and I talk again about the plants. For plants, it's actually the structural color has been discovered only recently, only a few years ago. And especially in the case of flowers, also flowers can produce this coloration in combination with pigment that are actually perceived by pollinator, and they function as a signaling mechanism from plants to pollinators. So this is a very interesting system, because in this case, it's also like a communication mechanism that goes beyond one species, but that goes from plants to pollinators. And similarly, in the case of fruits, like in the blue fruits that I'm reporting here, this pollia, for example, we think that this structural color is produced to deceive birds to be eaten and then disperse the seed. So again, a plant, in order to reproduce, needs to disperse the seed as much as possible. The more seeds you disperse, and the more larger area that you are able to disperse your seed, the better chance you have to survive and reproduce and be healthy. And in this way, if you somehow convince the eaters of these fruits to eat the fruits and then bring them around, you increase your chance of survival. And in this case, these fruits are really nice. They don't have any nutritional value, but that's why the plants use this trick of being really bright, intense color to attract plants and attract, in this case, small birds, and then deceive them without a nutritious reward, but only giving them the impression that they have eaten something fleshy. And my research is mainly focused on how the structural color in plants is made of. So what are the materials that are important in order to build up the structural color in plants, how it is distributed across different species, and how this color can be made in the lab. So here I just want to show you, like, if you, just as to have an idea. In plants, we find lots of this blue coloration, and what is interesting is that they are made mainly of one material, and the material is cellulose. That is a very common material that is found everywhere in plants. When you say that you need to have a diet rich of fibers and you need to eat a lot of vegetables, that's the vegetables, these fibers that you find in vegetables is essentially cellulose fiber. In these plants, however, the cellulose is distributed in a really unique way. It's made out of, it's organized in this helicoidal architecture where the fibers are parallel to each other in one direction, and then they stack up on top of each other at a twisting angle. And this organization, what is on the scale that is comparable with the wavelength of the light, actually can give rise color in a really similar way of what I was explaining before with the haze of the soap bubble. Okay, so the question, when I started my research working on these plants, and then I got fascinated by the fact how nature can make it and what are the material that it's used that are at the end material that are produced at room temperature in natural environment, only with the end cellulose that is like a polymer that is made out of sugar, yes, or glucose. So, and this really inspired me to can we make color in the same way that we can do in nature? And not only using the same architecture, this helicoidal structure, but also using the same material. And that's really, it's actually, the answer, yes, it's possible. We can do it. And we can take cellulose from any type of plants, from wood pulp to banana peel to orange peel to actually even old wood that has been recycled. You can extract the cellulose, and then with the cellulose we can do a process that is called self-assembly. It's a little bit like magic, but you can control it once you know a bit of physical chemistry principle. And again, as I was telling you before, with simply one material, you can make all the color in the spectrum, from blue to red to actually you can also make color that are in the ultraviolet region of the spectrum that we cannot see, but it's important in other visual system, but also like in the infrared part of the spectrum, only using one material. And we think that these materials are really important from our society, because especially when you think about how you make color today, the way that we make color are not very sustainable. And I like to show this graph that somehow try to put some numbers into what does it mean color in the context of sustainability. Yes, we are looking at, like, unfortunately, how the CO2 emissions are distributed across the panel, and then the usual suspect always are in the context of construction and like energy material. But also we think a lot about how much we impact with aviation and transport our planet, but often we don't think how much what we consume, it's also like an important source of CO2. And now textile and the cost, the CO2 cost associated to textile are becoming increasingly relevant in this type of diagram, which I think it's really crazy. And when you think about textile, you also think about pigment, because you want to color, our clothes are usually colored. So it's very important and we try to find more sustainable way. Actually, I think it's very important that we consume less, first of all. And second of all, it's also very important that we find more sustainable way to make color using material that in principle are biodegradable. And inspired by this work, then we started to really try to exploit this technology and bring it to reality. And we started to develop methods where we can use this cellulose, we can harvest it, we can make a large area material that then we can actually use them as pigment itself. And because we start from this cellulose, we can really make sheets of kind of colored paper that is made as paper, but it has a different organization. That's why it's colored. And by cutting it into different dimensions, we can obtain things that are more like glitter, but made only of cellulose, or things that are more like pigment that can be then introduced into different concepts. And there is a spin-off company that is called Sparxel that now is really trying to commercialize the effort that we have done in the lab and really creating color and color effect using only cellulosic material. And in the last minutes, I would like to talk about another color that it's also that people don't think too much about it, but it's actually white. White is one of the most used color that we can think about it. If you look at me, today I'm wearing a white t-shirt with a white background, and then lots of furniture are white. White is a color that is everywhere in the things that we have around, but actually it's also a color that it's in a lot of things that we eat. And then how is it possible to make white? Because what I was telling you before, a color is something that the standard pigmentation are color that absorb part of the spectrum, and what is not absorbed is scattered. And this is like a good way to start to think about white. When you think about white, okay, you don't absorb, and that could be also transparent because a glass doesn't absorb. You can see through your glass windows, but then it is transparent. So how do you go from transparent to white? So you need something that doesn't absorb, but you also need something that scatters effectively. So it means that scramble the directionality of the light so that this light can come back to you instead of passing through, like in the case of a glass. So actually, also here in nature, there are some organisms. This is an example of this white weevil that create structure inside the scale that are able to scatter the light very efficiently and create the color white. And you might say, this is not like super relevant. Also, milk is white, cloud is white. So what is difficult in making white? Actually, when you look at this beetle really closely, you can make white with a really tiny, in this really tiny scale that are only 5 micron thick. 5 micron thick, to just give you an idea, is like 20 times smaller than one of our hair. Yes, and how is it possible to make white in such a small amount of material? It's because the weevil had this really integrated network structure that is made of chitin, a material that is really similar to cellulose, and actually can manipulate light in this way to get this really bright white coloration. And this is really relevant, again, from an industrial point of view, because if you ever painted your house with a white pigment, and you had to cover a wall that was previously painted with a bright color, you have to make many different layers to cover properly what is behind the paint, the white paint. And usually you need thicknesses of the order of few hundred microns, 200-300 microns. Instead, this weevil is able to do it with really a little bit amount of material and also use a sustainable resource. And also that's why we started to work again to try to mimic the characteristic of this weevil. And then now we also been lucky to fund a company that is called, in this case, Saprify, that again use cellulose, but in this case that can make really highly performance white material using this nanostructured fibrilla structure. So I think I'm done, and I thank you for your attention, and please reach out to our companies if you are interested to have some of this material. They are really happy to collaborate with researcher, artists, and also other scientists.
Silvia, that was absolutely fascinating. And yes, lots of questions. And there's no doubt that, my gosh, going forward, we have so much to learn, and that we can learn from nature. So this is absolutely great. Everybody get your questions ready for the panel discussion. Before that, we have our third talk, which is an interesting follow-up from the first to the second. And now we talk number 3 is color for crafts, transferring traditional craft skills into future sustainable color practices. Riikka Räisänen, PhD, is a professor of craft science and craft pedagogy at the University of Helsinki in Finland. She has a background in natural sciences, which includes chemistry, physics and environmental studies, textile technology, craft research, and education. Her research interests are natural and bio-based colorants, sustainable textiles, as well as craft culture and textile heritage. Rika has led several research projects on bio-based colorants and bioactive compounds. The Strategic Color Council at the Research Council of Finland funded BioColor, EU Horizon funded Color for Crafts, and Jane and Atos Urko Foundation funded BioAnti. In 2016, she was awarded the Silver Medal of the Society of Dyers and Colorists UK for her work in natural colorants. And in 2022, she was awarded the Bronze Medal of the International Horticultural Society. Rika has actively published in scientific and popular forums with articles, lectures, and exhibitions. Without further ado, please welcome Rika Reisen. Rika, the screen is yours.
Thank you. I hope it goes forward. Okay, so hello everybody, and today I'm talking about the Colorful Crafts research project that has been running the last 3 years. Is it changing for you?
Yes.
Okay, great. So in this project, it started in 2023 and it ended just now at the end of June 2026. So for 3 years, we had a consortia of 6 partners, 2 from Finland, so University of Helsinki and University of Lapland from Finland, University of Tartu from Estonia, University of Leeds from the UK. Then when we had Research Institute, Royal Institute of Cultural Heritage, KIK IRPA from Belgium, and a company Pili from France. And together our aim was to study color, colorants and coloration skills, and we had really a multidisciplinary team of researchers presenting history, artifact research, cultural research, ethnography, art and craft research, natural sciences, and then future studies. And we focused through these different disciplines, the color and skill of coloration, and how we could learn from traditions to the future, and how to bring forward the knowledge transfer in color and coloration. And we especially focused on textile color and textile colorants. And from the call, this EU Horizon call, the aim was also to foster European cultural heritage, especially focusing on textile coloration and craft skills related to coloration, and create education to support the traditional craft skills and their usage on the 21st century practices, and by using the futures research methodologies to provide futures visions for coloration and textile production in Europe. So our timeline was in this study was quite broad, reaching from heritage craft from the 10th century till the futures technologies and futures visions of 2050. And in the middle, we also studied the creative sector practices. by craft practitioners and entrepreneurs. So to study past practices, contemporary practices, and then futures technologies in color and producing color through biotechnologies, and also novel textile coloration practices, for example, using waterless techniques, as we just heard. Using water and energy is quite vast and great issue in textile coloration. And in the future studies, we examined what would be the European color futures, and there we applied this futures cone perspective designed by Boros, where there are different futures, ones being the probable and preferable ones, but also some prosperous and not so probable futures. And these futures research methodologies we studied within the consortia. So we had consortia meetings, on-place meetings twice a year, and in each meeting we had a workshop, collaborative workshop, where we examined the issues related to possibilities and the probabilities in coloration and current visions as well. So we had these these three aspects: past, current, and future aspects. So in the history and tradition research group, the researchers were mainly historians and archaeologists, and we studied the northeastern Baltic area, which presents current Finland, Estonia, and Latvia. We gathered textile almost or 269 textile samples or remnants from textile pieces from these areas, and oldest of them were from the 10th century till the 19th century. So we kind of looked the transition period in the mid-19th century, when the natural dyes were switching into the first synthetic dyes. And we studied these textile samples by chemical means, HPLC, dot analysis, and tried to define the used dyes in these textiles. So we found new information about the colorants that were used in these northeastern Baltic area, especially in red dyes, that also local sources were used. And in addition to these archaeological and historic textile samples, we also studied written sources from the area. So also alder buckthorn bark was used, and Alder, and both techniques derived from readings from these were recorded also in these archival records, and traces of these plants were found in the textile samples. In addition to these historical samples and materials, the researchers also made extensive experimental dyeing, and they dyed nearly 890 reference samples, which then work as a reference library for future studies. And there is still going on, actually till the end of August, an exhibition in the Estonian National Museum in Tartu, Estonia, Colors of Our Clothes, the local and the global, which focuses on colors and historical sources. Also, color trade was one aspect to focus in this history and tradition work package. So still, if you are having holidays and traveling, the exhibition is going on in the Estonian National Museum. Also on our website, colorforcrafts.eu, you will find descriptions and virtual tours and digital tours to all of the exhibitions, and a lot of material that we provided during this research project. Then in this art and craft work package, so we focused on current practices. Aim was to examine the nature of color and current society's relationship with color, perception, use, and value. And for this value, we were interested in finding out values that are leading craft practices, and for that we interviewed 51 persons with semi-structures interviews. So there were 14 educators, 17 students, and 20 craft practitioners. And it was quite interesting. From the research material, we defined 6 values that among these persons that they defined that are leading their practices. So nature, heritage, know-how, making, performance of dye or the material, and sustainability. And we find out quite interestingly that different groups, for different groups, the values slightly differed what they emphasized the most. So for educators, the know-how, the skill, the professionalism, research, development, and innovation was the most important. While for students, the nature value as such, and nature connection, well-being, and multi-sensorial materials obtained from nature was the most important aspect. And for practitioners, the performance of dye and the material was the most important. Overall, the sustainability was very important for all of the groups, different groups, and also the making itself. So somehow we could recognize that when we think about the theories of this sustainability, so the nature is kind of seen the most important, like for the strong sustainability, which is based that the nature is the most important value, then the society comes the second, and then the economy. So this was also kind of found from our research data. Then one of the consortium partners was Pili company that is producing indigo colorant through the biosynthetic pathway in microbes. So they produced Pili genes, or introduced the development of Pili genes. So they produced this Pili eco indigo, they call the colorant, in 1 kilogram scale. And also they had made these LCA calculations that it's 20 times less or it uses less farmland than the plant-based indigo. And they, with the citizens of humanity, they produced these Pili genes and dyed the denim material. And these Pili genes were introduced in several exhibitions during the project, Color for Crafts project. We also had this one work group focusing on nature and science, where the aim was to fundamentally characterize the nature of natural dyes using novel methods, and also to quantify the compounds in these natural color extracts. Also to use this for the historical artifacts to trace back, to better trace back the sources of dyes. So altogether there were 72 plant and fungal species gathered and analyzed, and also 360 dyed wool samples created by dyeing wool materials with these plants. Then we also improved the qualities of natural compounds with the chemical semi-synthetic pathways to make them more competitive for the current materials. And also studied the chemical modifications of fibers to improve dye uptake, and also strengthen the damaged or aged fibers for conservation.
Rika, we have about 1 more minute so we can get on to the panel discussion. And so just...
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
So,
fascinating research.
Yeah. So then for future stretching, we had the new technologies, digital printing, following this SMYK system with blue, red, yellow colors. And we created this futures cone to map out the futures aspects of coloration. We created 2 books, these natural dyes for education and color experimentation is available as e-material, And also what is coming next is the transmitting and valorizing traditional craft knowledge for sustainable and innovative world. We created 7 articles, and this book will be published by Springer, and it's coming out later this year. So thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much. Lots of questions, and I think we'd love to have some of those links also. I'm sure that people want to have it, where those books are from and where we can have more information. So that is great. We will now do the panel discussion. So if all of the speakers can turn on your cameras, that would be terrific. That's Anahí, Lara, Silvia, Francesco, and Rika. And so thank you to everyone. Really appreciate everything that you have told us about. Silvia, can we get your camera on as well? Great. All right. I know we have, it's great to see an active chat box, and I think we want to start, so fascinating today to start with the early history and then moving through where we are currently and then thinking toward where we are with the future and looking at the connections between nature and what earlier humans have done, what our craft traditions are, and what we can learn now. So with that, I think a great question we'd love to hear from each of you on would be for your particular field. And I'll start with Anahí, and then Lara and Francesco, and then Silvia and Rika. But what is color literacy for you in your field? So we're talking about with our project, 21st century color literacy, and what we know now. So what would it mean? What does it mean to you? Anahí, start first with you. What is color literacy in your field? Oh, Anahí, yeah, there you go.
There I go. Well, I don't know, maybe Francisco and Lara can also, of course, contribute, but I think for us today, we have started to learn a lot ourselves about color the last years. So for us, it has been really a learning experience recently for us, and we have read a lot of articles. We have listened also to a lot of presentations, and we have needed all that input for us because we don't have any kind of formal education in archaeology that regards color, especially. So for us, we've been these kinds of forums and conferences and books and articles have been a really important input for our research. And we are still learning, of course. So for us, it has been very interesting also to listen to Rika and Silvia, because it's always interesting to understand other perspectives on color, of course.
Absolutely. And so with your team, with Lara and Francisco, I know you work, also in the similar field. Can you let us know for you, your experience with color literacy, what that means for you and what you've had to do to train yourself as well, how you've learned what you know?
I have to learn a lot, I think. In first place, I start to read some things about colors for different disciplines. I mean, I start to search in design and communication and art and architecture and physics because I need a kind of definition and to understand how to start to studying the color. So I think it's important to learn from another disciplines and to try to open our knowledge about the color because, as Anahí said, we don't have any kind of formation in that team. Sorry for my English.
Oh, it's good. No, so your training did not involve in both cases so far. You're saying color training was not part of your education, before you came to this project? Is it something you've had to put together yourself?
I think it's a subject that it's always there, but we don't have this formal formation. We don't have this issue like structure. So we also came with a difficult that think about color in a society that is not ours, it's not Occidental. So we have to use all the information, all the perspective that we can find to understand possibility of use of color in a society that is not ours, is a different one. So it's a challenge.
Yeah, so in other words, we can't necessarily at all use our own experience because we have to try to understand what previous cultures have, how they've used it. So you have to look at everything that they're doing and try to figure that out.
Yes, because that's why we needed all that toolbox I told you about. That for us, it's not only cultures and society that are not ours, but most of them are not here now to talk to us, of course. So we can't. We are doing some experiences of some interviews and some work with descendants of some of the people that were here when the Europeans came. But as we are talking about 12,000 years of history, we also have to be open to understanding a lot of cultures and societies that are really not there to talk to us. So it's a challenge, as Pancho said, as Francisco said, that we have to tackle, and we have to use a lot of tools and everything that we can think about to understand them.
It's so interesting because for us, in starting the project, we have found that color is not studied in hardly any disciplines in any sort of organized way, and yet we live in the world of, as all of you have said in your talks, that we're completely surrounded by it. And then, as you know, as Silvia's talking about through nature, and we're communicating with it, so important, but yet we haven't had an understanding of what that is. So I guess it's part of it's just, as we're saying, the interdisciplinary nature makes it, very important to collaborate across disciplines, and that is not easy to do. So it's interesting to hear from you all that you're looking across so many different disciplines to try to understand this. And let me ask you, with Silvia, your presentation was so fascinating because now we're opening it up to like what is going on between plants and animals. So for you, and with your interest in color and your ideas about color literacy, what is that? What is color literacy for your field? What does that mean?
So, I am an optics person, so I come from like, people working with lasers and things like that, like proper physicists. So for me, color was a spectrum, something you can measure, you put like, your probe, and then you can get like an answer that is like kind of dry if you want, right? Then when I started to work with this, starting to like understand the structural color and then how this is used in nature, I found it really fascinating. And then the color means much more now than a spectrum. It means like it's like can be a biological significance. Color can also be like, it's the challenge of making color more sustainably, or it can also be like, color, like how different actually also connected to perception, connected to the visual system. It's also like in the animal, it's really nice. For us also, it's always like we always think about red, green, and blue because these are our photoreceptors, but actually also exist humans that have another photoreceptor. And for them, color is different again, physically. I'm not even talking about how neurologically color can be perceived in different way by different people, that it's also like, another field of study. So, I think it's really, like different, maybe there is not one science of color, like, but like there are different topic and different topic also in like actually in research that are going on now that touches color from many multiple aspects. Yes. And I think this is a really like, that's why I like this area, because it's spread so across so many different problems. Yeah.
And then, but it's interesting, absolutely. How do you train someone to then, you're learning about all the plants, you're learning about animals, you're learning about their communications, you're learning, so interesting the breadth of what color literacy would means and how we can learn from your research. So I guess, so you're saying it's very interdisciplinary.
Yes, it's very interdisciplinary, and in fact, it's not that it's all what I show and presented. Like, for example, we mainly work on plants and we focus a lot into plants. This is what my research group is mainly doing. But what I presented is also like work of other people. There are many people working like exclusively in insect or most butterfly wings and how this is developed, how this, it's you can find it's really vast because there are a lot of problem and a lot of different way to approach the context of color. So I think it's fascinating.
Yes, and that then, so Rika, with you, looking at the crafts traditionally and learning how we can produce them now, how would you answer the color literacy importance of color literacy, or what is it for you in your field?
Yes, I'm a researcher and a teacher at the University for Teachers. So I think it's very important to rise and to teach the knowledge of color, and especially like we know from our research that for most people the color is such visual thing, and they don't think that it's also material. And if we think of textiles and color, it also is one of the most polluting things in the industries of the industry. So through color literacy, I think it's for me and my field important to teach and inform the future teachers what is color, where it comes from, what does it make, because then also color is related a lot of to a lot of meanings and values and things like that, and it's really like important what we think of color also for the future, that we can as teachers and for future generations to build a more sustainable future, what it comes to our color.
Well, just a quick question, and then we're going to get an audience question. A quick follow-up question for you, Rika. Would that mean, so teaching teachers? It's interesting. We always come across the question of, is it science teachers? We have it, everything's in their little silo. Is it art? Is it science? Is it sociology? Is it archaeology? Which teachers could get trained, and what's your thought about that? So you train teachers.
Yes, I train teachers. What we usually train, like I have a multidisciplinary background, so I'm working also in the fields of science in chemistry, but I'm also I'm a professor in the education. So we teach the compulsory school teachers. We also teach the subject teachers in all different subjects at school. So math, chemistry, but especially since from my background, then the chemistry teachers and the craft teachers. In Finland, we have the craft as a school subject, and it's taught for all students at school. So the teaching craft teachers, the color phenomenon and color, it kind of it goes to every student, because all students are participating these craft lessons at school.
Wow. Okay, that's fascinating. And we're going to be feeding questions from the audience. Maggie Maggio is monitoring the chat box. There we are. Yes.
Good. Okay, so thank you all for your presentations. I'm actually going to try to tie together a few of the questions that were asked based on the theme, which we started with looking at trying to define the pigments and understanding where maybe the pink and violet come from. And there was a question about, what has the saturation of those paints have to do with the aging of those paints? And so we look back at that, and now we're at the point where we're trying to understand the color fastness of our current structural pigments that we're developing. And so my question, we can go one by one, when we look at this area of materiality, our culture has an emphasis on trying to keep things color fast. And yet, what is your perspective on how we might adopt something more organic neutral as an approach to color as we work? So there was a question from Sanyana about the color fastness of the nanocellulose materials. And so there's that question. There's a question about how you would define those pinks and violets that you're seeing in relation to aging. And then that was from Verena. And then there's also a question that has to do with, from Sebastian, that was about the saturation aging. So this is my point, is where are we here? So we'll start with Anahí, looking at, those cultures. They probably weren't too concerned with color fastness, or were they?
The work we are undertaking with Francisco and Lara, for example, shows us that a lot of colors, or what we are seeing is that some colors are due to different materials, but tying with also what Silvia says, different colors sometimes are due to the same material, but is treated differently. So sometimes, for example, we can find different shades of a color, but instead it's the same material, the same pigment, but sometimes it's treated differently. Or sometimes they add different binders and different kind of other things that change, of course, the color we perceive. So for us, that is an issue. We're trying to understand how the material that was used and the color we observe is tied together or not. And also some of what we've been saying is the preservation issues we have in the archaeological record. Of course, different shades could be due to different chronologies, because of course we can't expect that a handprint that was produced 12,000 years ago has the same shade, perfect shade that one that was produced maybe 2,000 years ago, or the one that was produced 500 years ago. So for us, it's very, very important to understand all these kind of different issues that can, to understand the colors we see today, of course. No, I don't know if that answers the question, because you mentioned a lot of different things. So I don't know if maybe I missed something else. I don't know, Francisco and Lara, maybe.
Francisco, Lara?
Yes, I think that this is a very difficult issue to us. It's a starting subject that we're trying to understand. We have some clues linked to recipes of color, maybe mix it with gypsums of calcita or different elements. And we know also that heat is a very important element for changing the color of the pigment, but there are all questions that we're trying to understand. And well, we are very much in the starting point with 5-10 years of working, but I think we are starting.
Okay. Lara, did you want to add anything?
No, it's there's a lot of question about how we define the color, and if the color in the past, the color we see today, maybe is not the original one, but in some cases, I mean, pink is very different than red, and probably it's a material thing, and a kind of mixtures differences, but we have a lot of questions more than answers. I mean, at this point, it's a work that we started this work at 3 years ago, so we have a lot of questions and not all the answers for now.
Good. And Sylvia, there was a question from Sanyana from the NC State about the color fastness of the nanocellulose. And I think you had mentioned, I think in the chat you answered about the water.
Yeah.
What about
I think
what
it's,
about
yeah,
UV?
I think it's that's I think it's like it's an interesting question for many aspects. The first one is that so it's the cellulose is really stable to UV because it doesn't absorb. It's not like a color like pigments. So all the structural color, they are not bleaching, they are not photo bleaching like the pigment color because they are not made out of absorbing some of the light and then what is not absorbed. And this absorption mechanism essentially consumes on long term the molecules, yes? One of the fruits that I show in the picture, it was kept in in an herbarium of Kew at the Kew Botanic Garden for 150 years. The color of the fruits are bang blue, and then the leaves are completely faded, and that already tells you that it's a different, it's something that it's weird, yeah. So UV it's fine, and then in context of degradation in years, again, it's exactly the same problem of the other pigment, because when you use a pigment, or the structural color made pigment, you still have to apply to your material, yes? So the way you apply to your material will affect how durable, how stable it is. We can make them, and this is actually something that is also nice, comes up to now. So this color that have been made by human-made all through this ages, right? You can still see them today. That tells you that have an impact, environmental impact, yes? So obviously it's not a big problem now, yes? But then you start to think about if you make this system out of plastic and this accumulate, they will also have an environmental impact, yes? So the lasting or not lasting, it's something we have to think about it, yes? So I work with cellulose and I was very motivated on the things we are gonna make pigment that are great, that are gonna save the world, and these pigments are really bad. But then you become older, and then you start to realize, yes, you want to solve a problem, but you are creating many others. So I think that cellulose, instead, it's a good material in principle because it's biodegradable, it's bioderived. But obviously, we are already consuming 30% of the biomass that we have, and then to be sustainable, you should use 10. Yes, so I think it's like in all these type of things, it's important to look ourselves as consumer and how much we throw away and how much we affect what is around us, also in the context of color. Yes, I'm not saying we should live in black and white and not have a color at all, but I think we should really think about it, and also the way that it's used to today. Yes, and this microplastic pollution, the glitters that you have now available, that my children come back covered to the head every day at home, essentially is like rubbish that goes from the shop to the planet, contributing to the macroplastic problem. Yes, for just for free, because the cost of these things is like nothing. Yes, so I think we need, I think this is for me, this is like the most important aspect as well, that everything that we use, everything we do, it will have an impact. Cellulose can be better, but also can be is not the answer of the problem by itself. We need to find ways where we can reuse more, impact as much as less as possible, and because otherwise we will be in trouble.
Yeah. So I just before we go, I want to ask Rika, you had mentioned the pili genes. And so your research and everything that you've been working with over the last 3 years, how would you just quickly address this issue of the color and sustainability and in the craft world?
Yeah, I would also like to add to this others. So when we look at the color also from the recyclability point of view, since we are already using too much of our virgin materials, we should recycle more. And for that reason, we should in my opinion, we could look more of the degradability of the color, because you can bleach the natural dyes, for example, more easily out of the dyed garments than if the synthetic dyes are very stable and this bleaching is very difficult from them. And this was one thing that we were looking for our project, and also how the textiles are maintained with more mild detergent and washing cycles, which also comes to the standardization, that these current standards for color fastnesses are really harsh. And if we want to go towards more sustainable and recyclability textiles, maybe we should also change the current standard. So there is really a lot of this kind of color literature things that we should change our mindset of color. What is it that we really need, or are our textiles too much engineered that they last for 30 years, like some of my polyester jackets? I'm wearing one that is at least 20 years old, and it's still like a new one. That do we really want this kind of world that never wears out, or what is the future? And this Billie Jean thing is, of course, that the process, that the way it's used, it can be produced through these microbes in low energies, and with like starting materials that are really easy and to get, like sugars or some other side streams from other industries that can be recycled and reused, and then got the dyes from there. So
Yeah, looking at the future. So we looked at the way back, and now we're going to be looking a little bit more ahead. I'll turn it back over to Luann.
Yes.
yeah.
What an amazing discussion, and so many questions, and so many things to follow up on. Thank you very much, Anahí, Lara, Francisco, Silvia, and Rika, for sharing your research with us today. Such an honor. And thank you to everyone for being part of our forum. Before we adjourn, yes, I'd like to invite you to keep an eye out for the next forum of our 2026 series that will take place in the fall. We don't have the date exactly yet, but details will be posted on the Color Literacy Project website as soon as it's available, so please stay tuned. And in the meantime, we encourage you to visit the website to learn more about 21st century color literacy. Check out the resources, including fundamental exercises and concepts and recordings from all of our forums that are posted on the YouTube channel. So with that, thank you to everyone. Please keep in touch and enjoy your life in color. See you next time. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Thank you.
Bye.